Thanks a lot, Victor, and welcome to this session. I have to be honest, I was expecting, a handful. It's late afternoon, it's the third session, energy level, sunny day, values. Don't know quite what to make of that. I'm going to go and sun myself, but you haven't done that. You're here, so I'm impressed and flattered, and I'll try to do justice. The other thing I was thinking, when I set this session up was, well, you've been sat listening to folk all day and so it'd be nice to do something, but actually in the session I did before and the session I attended, that's been happening a lot already, so not so novel, but it probably won't be a surprise to you to say that we're going to be doing stuff together, and these rooms don't immediately lend themselves to that at all. But we do the best we can. In fact, all the sessions I've been in, people have made the best of it, so I'm sure you will this time. And the other thing is an excuse before we get into it, but getting you to work together, is that this subject is not the sort of thing which I can go on about and you would have the patience to listen to me about for much longer than about 20 minutes, which is what I'm going to talk to you about. Because it's about getting the hang of it by doing the discussion. Human beings are amazing animals, and the complexity of the way that we communicate and persuade and motivate is just, never ceases to amaze me. And so a certain amount of theory and learning is great, but actually figuring it out together is much more valuable. Anyway, enough of that. Who was in my session this morning? A few. Okay, so some of you know about me. Maybe a third. So probably I should quickly, apologies for those of you who've heard already, just explain that I'm a professor of regeneration and sustainable development at the University of Salford. Work out of the School of the Built Environment. My research is all about sustainable change, behaviour, and motivation. It's a strange place to do that out of, except to say that a lot of the work I've been doing recently is with householders, tenants, different kinds of organisations who want to make sustainable changes, but for one reason or another are finding it difficult to do that. And so I've come up with different ideas. So why am I doing this? Well, I spent most of my career, by the last 4 years, as a sustainability consultant with various organisations. The last 10 years, before I became an academic, with a not-for-profit consultancy set up by the Cooperative Bank, because they wanted more people to understand how you can run an organisation on sustainable lines, but they were trying to run a bank at the time. So they set up us to help other people understand about it. And I came from mainstream consultancy because it was attractive to me to come out of the straight sort of profit-making motive and understand more about sustainability. And I was also attracted by the social side of what I was doing. Didn't mean to make a loss, by the way. We kept the head above water, but you know what I mean. It's a third sector sort of ethic, which is suitably bad. Towards the end of that, I became very frustrated. All my career, I'm trying to get people to do things differently. Sometimes they're successful, most of the time wasn't. And so I started thinking, well, I'm obviously rubbish at it, so maybe I should concentrate more on my content. But I didn't do that. I teamed up with a psychologist. We wrote a book called Positively Responsible to try to answer the question, why is it that people line themselves up to be rational beings to make decisions based on fact and then do the other thing? Is it because people are basically stupid or lazy or and the answer to that, lo and behold, is by and large no. That isn't true, although we can all think of a few people that might fit that bill. No, it isn't that. It's because other things impinge upon. And I became very interested in that because I realised most of my career, whether it was environmental impact assessment or social accounting or boardroom visioning using the natural step or whatever I was doing, because I did all of those things as a consultant, I realized it was all part of the same thing, although I didn't realize at the time. It was all about people to make better, sustainable decisions using a whole range of different things. So that's very quickly the background that brings me here to talk to you about this subject. Okay, so what I'd like to do is just share with you something that I came across when I was writing the book and have used since, which is a different way of looking at people, if you like. And it really has to do with understanding people's needs as opposed to what they do, what they have done, how much money they've earned, what their family is like or not, or where they live. Because that's generally how most marketing communications and many environmental campaigners look at us. They categorize us in that way. But actually, when you think about it, the way we make decisions, which I'll explain in a minute, doesn't have much to do with any of those things. Those are all symptoms of who we are. So, that's really what I want to put in front of you. And hopefully, while I'm talking, you'll be thinking about possible campaigns, persuasion techniques, different things that you would like to do, which have to do with motivating or persuading colleagues or students or managers, whoever, just to look at them in a different light, or to just maybe compare what you have done and what you understand with this and see if you're missing anything. Because that's one of the things I've done, worked with the Energy Saving Trust to show them that the way they were looking at people was missing out a whole chunk of folk, and hence their campaigning wasn't ever going to hit home more than 2/3 because they just weren't speaking the right language to that last bit. That's the sort of thing. That's how I've applied it. Okay, so just go over a few things, just so long as we understand what we're talking about here. And if there's any psychologists or behavioural scientists in the room, for me. But this is how I understand it. Basically, when we're talking about values, it's an individual's judgment of what is valuable or important in life. And so that's really helpful, isn't it? Not really, but it accurately reflects what values are. But what you take out of that definition is how can you tell what's real? What one person's values against another person's values? Reacting to the same thing, it's going to be different, isn't it? Yeah, it is. All the time. Whose values is the question that you should always ask. But possibly more important than that, because even though this is all about values, I don't want to get into that too much, because we would just be talking philosophy for the rest of the session, which might appeal to some of you, but that's not where I'm going. Is to think about persuasion and motivation as values plus. And so work that I've looked at lists a whole bunch of other things that help people to make decisions. How are they motivated? What do they know? How have they become aware or not of something? What are their attitudes? How emotionally engaged are they? How much control or not do they feel they have over the situation? Are they responsible for an issue or are they not? And do they have priorities? All of these things, and you'll recognize this in yourselves, in all the decisions that you make, that all makes sense, doesn't it? But when you're trying to set up a campaign or think of motivating people, that is a bit of a daunting list, isn't it? I mean, you really, to be effective, would need to know each of those variables in every single person you talk to in order to be really, really effective. That is impossible. So, that's it. We've had it. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but you can shortcut to a certain degree. And that's what I like about the method that I'm going to share with you today. I've shown this slide in my first session, but it's highly relevant in this one as well. It is important to understand what attitudes are. And effectively, what they are is a sort of a regular feeling, disposition, the way that you are going to be leaning towards different issues, and you will do that differently according to different issues. And then the psychotherapists get going. You'll be relieved to know I haven't brought those slides with me. That would really do you in, I can assure you. So it's that even though we might understand all of this, there are maybe some things that have happened in our lives, probably when we were younger, that are affecting us in ways that probably we're not totally aware of. Again, we're not going to go there. But isn't it interesting that once you start getting into this, and we're just sort of scratching the surface, and you look at the way government try to persuade us to do things, with public information announcements and billboards, I mean, how ineffective could that possibly be when you start understanding how people think? And yet they persist in doing these things. Why? Because it looks like they're doing something, but I would be amazed if even they would admit that it would actually have any effect at all. And it annoys me when I see that, because I know it's a waste of money. But there you go. It's about getting voted in, isn't it? Not really changing anybody's mind. So, going on to emotions and thought and willingness. These are all elements of attitude, and it's quite important that that we realise that that fact, the cognitive element, is only one part of what builds towards our attitudes. It's about as much about emotions and also willingness as it is about fact. So that starts to explain, which was a great relief to me before I realised all about this, that I wasn't giving people the wrong information, which is why they weren't making a decision. They were not making a decision because they weren't invested in it. And on willingness, so a couple of other things were missing. The first was they weren't completely convinced that what I was helping them to decide to do would actually work. And also, at the back of their minds, they were thinking, it might work, but people will think I'm a complete idiot for doing this. Okay, and that is probably one of the most powerful effects. You know, the fact that in this country you could probably die of embarrassment is a joke that I always tell, which just exemplifies what I'm trying to say. You know, there's always the thought in the back of your mind that either individually or much more importantly professionally, people are worried about what people think. I also said it before that senior managers' greatest fear is that they'll be found out. And I think that's fascinating because it doesn't matter what it is. The fact that they're insecure means that they're occupying a position of seniority. That means that they have to continually exemplify leadership and what senior people do. And deep down, they are always worried that they haven't got the right status. So the driving force for most very senior people is not, have I got all the facts and have I made the right decision? It's, am I going to look like I don't deserve to be here? Once you start realizing that, it gets a bit scary, really, doesn't it? You're thinking, oh, I thought that they were on top of the situation. Hopefully they are, but that isn't necessarily the driving force. Okay, so getting closer to what we're talking about, values now. And this is the work that I did with the Energy Saving Trust. Are people familiar with Mosaic and Acorn? Have anybody worked with that? In the last session I did, I sat in on talking about another one that I forgot about, which is the DEFRA segmentation about people on the sidelines and committed doers and that sort of thing. You know, the kind of thing that we're talking about. It's all about geodemographic stratification, which is a really posh and long-winded way of saying where do you live, how old are you, how much do you earn, and a few other things. Okay? And that is supposed to characterize all of us. And consumer groups, communicators, marketeers, all think that once they understand about that, they get everything about it. And what I'm saying to you is that can't possibly be right. Can't possibly be right. Okay? You just think of all the friends that you've got who earn different amounts of money, who have attitudes that do not accord with their earnings, and you know immediately you're there. Now, obviously, earnings, or whether you live in the south of the country or the north of the country, will have an influence on you, but it doesn't define you. I don't think so anyway. So, the alternative, and this is what I became interested in, I have known a guy called Chris Rose for a long, long time. Now, he was doing his PhD when I was at Chelsea College, and a few older people in the room will know. Most of you go, Chelsea College, weren't there? Of course, it got swallowed up by King's many, many years ago. I was right on King's Road, and he was doing that. I was an undergraduate, and even then he was a zealot for sustainability. Went on to join Greenpeace and was the mainstay and director of the Brenstar occupation campaign. So now you know who he is, or at least you know that campaign. And since then, he's done a number of different jobs, but he runs his own outfit now called Campaign Strategy, which I would commend to you. It's just a font of knowledge about it. He's written a couple of books on how to campaign and how to understand things. And he's got very interested in this values-based stuff, which an organization called Cultural Dynamics had pioneered. So, what is that all about? Instead of doing where people live and how much they earn, you talk about their human needs. What are people interested in? What makes them tick? What makes them get up in the morning? And the idea basically segments the entire population down into three types of people, and then subdivides them, which I won't confuse you with. I get confused with it. But it's, if you know anybody into like the zodiac and all that sort of thing, you know you can have Aries in the house of Taurus. You know? I mean, that's about some of my knowledge. But you know what I mean? It's like mixtures of, that's what they've done. They've blend some of these segmentations into others. But that's not important for this session. It's just the fundamentals which I'd like you to sort of grapple with. And so the three and we'll go into a bit more detail, is people who are in a direction, who are sort of motivated by ethics and truth. They tend to do things off their own bans. They don't really care what other people think. They're very keen to grasp new ideas. Then there's outer-directed people, people for whom the regard of others, personal esteem, is a really important factor. And they, instead of thinking about the future a lot like the first group, they're here and now people. Very fashion conscious, know exactly where you know good to be seen eating that week or that sort of thing. And then the third group are security people. They hark back to a day when things were better. They're the kind of people who say somebody must do something about this. It's terrible. And security is a big issue for them. Okay, so we'll go into that in a bit more detail. And Chris and his friends have worked on this a little bit more, and he even started to count people because they've done surveys which are quite involved actually. And this is basically how they're looking at things. Note that the middle band, which he calls prospectors, which is the esteem-based people, are the largest single group. And apparently they're growing. So there's a migration from settlers into prospectors, and some prospectors are migrating into finance, that's what he's saying. So just to go over it, to put a little bit more detail on it, remember the pioneers, they were the outer-directed people. They like doing things for themselves. They like new and exciting things. The settlers, the security-based people, always call on someone to do something, and they don't like being knocked out of their comfort zone. And the prospectors in the middle, they love working with other people, okay? And if it feels good, if it's working, maybe they're a little bit in the center of stuff, and it's, you know, going well, then nothing could be better. They're really, really good. So the work I did with the Untitled Savings Trust is to overlay their segmentation about rural, older people who have lots of money, and young, struggling families, and urbanites, and you know, you must have seen this kind of these little tags that they put, and it gets quite complicated. Some are 12, some are 24 different types of people. Okay. So I compared this with their segmentation, and what you get is a whole bunch of their segmentation in pioneers, quite a lot in settlers, very little. Because even though they're the most populous. Why is that? It's because you cannot interpret where you live, how much you earn, how old you are, with the fact that you like to work with them. That doesn't work. There's not a variable there. How would you know? Okay? And also, it's quite difficult to ask people easily about those things. Whereas doing demographics and surveying housing types and stuff, well, that's easy. That's easy data to collect. You haven't even bothered people. Why would you want to engage with people? They're awkward. But with this, you've got to talk to them. Lo and behold, you find some very interesting things when you actually talk to people. And this idea of esteem, of the fact that people like to work with other people, but they need to know that it's going to work. That's quite important with prospectors. The worst thing for a prospector is to stick their neck out to do something and then be laughed at, really, by other people saying, oh, what a waste, you fell for that? Oh dear. Mortification, desperation, not good for a prospector. And so there's a certain amount of work that you would have to do to engage these people to say, look, you know, it's going to happen for you. It really, really is. And there's rewards at the end, goodies, and we'll single you out, and it's going to be good for you. Okay? So are you starting to get a feel for these different categories? Because that's really what we're going to be consumed with for the rest of this session. Because I'm going to ask you to really think in these three groups and think about a campaign that you want to run that would appeal to each one. Okay? Obviously, the point I'm trying to make right away, make it early and then later, is one campaign definitely will not fit all. Definitely will not fit all. One campaign might fit 1/3 of your target group, according to this idea. Right? Now, I'm not trying to sell you this idea. It isn't even my idea. I'm trying to maybe widen the horizons of your thought process about who you're talking to, how you talk to them, and how you think things are going to work out, based on a different way of thinking about it. Okay? I'm not saying you should rely on this. That probably wouldn't be a great idea. But if you ignore it, like my friends at the Energy Saving Trust, you run the risk of excluding 44% of the population you're going for without even losing the argument on the doorstep, because they're not listening to you. They're never going to listen to you. Okay, so that's really what I'm trying to say. I want to say a few things, though, about framing. Some of you who've done communication and marketing will know about framing, but it is definitely worth a few minutes on this, because effectively, if I'm asking you to try to address these three different groups, what I'm trying to get you to do is frame the same initiative in three different ways. That's what I'm trying to get you to do. So what is it? How does it work? So, simply, it just provides the context. Okay? and if you understand the context from your point of view, you get it and you engage, and if you don't, if it doesn't make sense to you, I could talk to you for the next 50 hours and you will never get it, because it just doesn't make sense to you. It doesn't work for you. The other really difficult element about this is that people can't necessarily articulate the way they understand issues. You know, no one's going to come to you and say, well, I hear what you say, but if you frame it in this way, I'll understand what you're saying. But if you carry on like this, I'll continue to ignore you. That's not a conversation you're ever going to have with anyone. Okay, so let's just give some examples. I've got two. So let's go for climate change, because we're all friends together on climate change, aren't we? And we've all had discussions, hopefully, trying to convince doubters and others. So how could you frame it? So the first thing that you could try is to say the climate is changing. We are changing the climate. That might work to a certain extent. It probably would work with the pioneer group, some of them anyway. Probably wouldn't work with the other two. How can you change the climate? You know, it's been around since forever. Actually, it hasn't. Only 3 billion, but never mind. You know, how can we influence the climate? That's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. Scientifically impossible. Well, actually it isn't. Too late, gone, thinking about dinner, not going to happen for you. Okay? So framing the argument that we need to reduce fossil fuels and you need to switch off the lights because climate change is going to get worse is a loser for some people. All right, say, I tell you what, let's check. No, okay, forget that. Let's say we need to switch off lights because fossil fuel is killing the planet. Is it really? But what else would we use? I mean, almost all the energy in the world is fossil. What do you want me to do? You know, run out and get an electric car tomorrow? You can't plug them in. What are you talking about? Okay, this isn't going well. So for the security minded, that would be an absolute go to try to get them, because they're out of their comfort zone now. You're asking them to do something completely different and they don't understand how to access it. So arguing that fossil fuel is the problem is not going to work with those people. Okay, and probably not for many prospectors. But again, pioneers would work. Pollution. Climate change is a form of pollution. It's CO2 and other greenhouse gases. We're loading stuff that's going up into the atmosphere. Well, we live in a small planet and we're screwing it up. Oh, right, that's not good, is it? No. If we carry on doing that, say the settlers, that's going to change things, isn't it? Yeah, definitely is. Yeah. Oh, okay. Maybe you should do something about that. What, say, the prospectors, can we do about it? I mean, we're polluting. Well, maybe if we work together and sort of figure out at a community level how to reduce that. Okay, do you see how this works? So if you're framing it, different people are going to respond to things in different ways. And if you notice, I have said that none of these frames are wrong, because they will appeal to a certain type of person, but they definitely won't appeal to everybody. So you have to change the way you frame things for the same subject. And using things like this for pollution does help. So even though I've not in, anybody recognize this from the natural step? I love the natural step. I use it all the time. Really, really good way of getting sustainability points across very quickly. Most of it's about the laws of thermodynamics. Can't argue with that. So helpful. But they also produce some lovely diagrams. And you can go on, and I do, putting people at rest, saying, you know what, do you remember when you were like 8 or 12 or something, and you were sitting in the back of the class, and they were talking about this and the water cycle, and you were busy messing with your mate's hair or throwing spitballs or whatever you were into at that age? right? You know, well, I'm going to bring you back to those memories, not the spitball, but the lesson, because you have mostly forgotten about this. I know you haven't, because this is your thing, but most of the audiences I talk to, oh yeah, I vaguely remember, you know, we're all in a small planet, it's whizzing around in a vacuum, the atmosphere is equal to a lick of paint on a basketball, you know, it's fragile, it's dodgy, we can mess it up easily. Works really well. That thing. So if you couple elements of targeted information at the right time when you're talking emotions and the right frame, you start to win the game. And then you can move on, natural step again, about how we're messing things up. Now, I don't have time to go into this. I know maybe some of you be interested. We can talk about it later, or you can look it up yourself. But this sort of thing is very helpful, because once you have people on a frame like pollution, you can then reel them in and talk about 1,000 man-made chemicals in public air milk, and as many facts and figures as you can throw at them that touch on the emotion but also reach the cognitive level. But that will never work unless you have framed it properly. That's not easy. Okay, let's try one more and then we'll get into the exercise. Flooding, that's endlessly interesting to me, and in fact, the work that I did in communities wasn't just on energy conservation, but also on flooding. I was successful in getting people to buy better boilers for fruit and vegetables, which is my little experiment. I was not successful in getting people to buy door guards and air brick covers in return for garden makeovers and access to colleges and all the other things I was offering. Not because those prizes weren't attractive, but because people just did not believe that their house was going to be flooded. In fact, little known fact, depressing, there you go, 80% of people who live in a flood-threatened area know that they live in a flood-threatened area. Almost all of them would answer on a survey that the chances of their house being flooded was either negligible or very low. Where do you go from there? As a policymaker, nowhere, really. If you think that shoving another leaflet through the door is the right thing to do, never going to work. Okay? Should you just leave people their own devices? Could do, but the vulnerable are going to suffer if you do that. So it's incumbent on people who understand these things to try to make this work. And it's not going to happen the way it's happening at the moment. And the Environment Agency have been funding me, and I have told them that, so I'm not looking at it. Okay, so let's do this one. You should protect your house against flooding because it's very risky. Well, I've just given you the statistic on risk. No, it isn't. Okay, thank you for listening. None of these folk are going to go for it, no matter how engaged they are. And I proved that in my experiment. That is not a good frame. That doesn't work at all. In fact, it's highly risky. The chances of you getting flooded out of your home are increasing yearly. And 1 in 6 houses are at from flooding now, and then that will continue to increase. People don't get it, and they're not happy. Believe in that. Okay, so it's going to save you money. What if I tell you that the average investment to protect your home against flooding is around about £3,000, and you don't get any money back for that? That's a big dissuader. But a lot of people, interestingly, said, yeah, but I'm insured. Why would I have to worry about that? You know, okay, so in about 18 months, you can get back in your home and all your photos and clothes are ruined. But you'll be quids in. What? You know, that's not right. But the thought process is, I'm not going to lose any money. The insurance company will give me the money. So why would I save money? So again, almost right across the board, regardless of value set, that frame isn't going to really work either. interestingly, what is working better is this little piece of information I sort of left with you on purpose when I talk about vulnerable. There is, believe it or not, a bigger community tendency than we think. People are concerned about disabled people, people with young children and the elderly. And if it looks likely that their neighbourhood is going to be flooded and you frame it in those terms, people do tend to get together and talk about it in greater numbers. Not in enough numbers to make a difference at the moment, but that's if you had to pick one of those three frames, that would be the one that got the most people involved. Okay, so I'm making sense here, aren't I? The point I'm trying to make is you've got to think how you put it across. And if you cross that with the sort of value sets that we're talking about, it starts to make sense. Okay, so that is effectively what I really want to weigh you down with on this issue. We could go on and on about different organizational, psychological, and social psychological studies, and you know what? Let's not do that. You understand what I'm saying? I'm putting to you that we could think about three different types of people, and easily the best way of exploring this is to have that. So here's what I would like you to do. So happens at your university or college, apologies, I had no idea that so many colleges were plugged in. My fault. Should have been a little bit of a clue to see. So sorry, your university or college has decided to run a building-by-building competition to reduce energy consumption. Is this a completely mad and stupid idea? Yes, probably. We're actually doing it, so it's a real example. The difficulty that we have found, so you can help me with this as well as helping yourself to understand what I'm trying to say, is we are engaging some people but not everyone on this. Okay? So, what I'd like you to do is to prepare what I'm calling an influencing strategy that incorporates this approach that we've been talking about. So what I want you to do is think about each of these three groups. I'll put the slide back on to remind you basically the characteristics of each of them. And the strategy, so basically you're coming up with three for the same attempt, has to be aimed for maximum participation and maximum results. So why did I put those two things? Because you can engage lots of people, but they won't do anything. You can engage a few people and do really well. Most people won't be bothered. I want you to do both. I want you to engage the maximum amount of people, maximum results. It means you have to think about how you would frame motivating people to do this. And we could talk mostly about staff, but we could also talk about students. I'm happy anybody who would make a difference on site is part of the campaign. So what each group would come up with when we feed back is, okay, so here's our idea. For the pioneers, we would do X, Y, Z. For the prospectors, we would do A, B, and C. And for the settlers, we would do N, W, Z. Okay, so that's what I want to do. Everybody happy with what I've asked you to do? Everybody understand? Any questions? Everybody's been very quiet. That's probably because energy levels are in the boots. There you go. Hopefully when you get cracking on this, you will feel better. So I'll put this back up again. Now, clearly, this isn't good for what I want you to do. But I have seen that people magically congregate into clumps and things. If I can say no fewer than 5, and just sort of find a place. You can go up to 7s and 8s. More than that, people don't participate properly. So can you just sort of congregate and populate, or whatever the word is? how are we going to do this? What we're going to do is we're going to take each group in turn. This is going to help me to scribble stuff down, and then we'll take pictures at the end, and then that's how we'll capture it. So what I'm going to do is, if in time-honoured fashion, if one of you, probably the poor soul who's writing the notes, doesn't have to be that, can just read out the first thing on your list that hasn't been said by anybody else. Okay? And then we'll get through this fairly quickly. You understand what I'm going to do? So we'll start with the pioneers, and I'll just point to each group vaguely because I can't tell the joins, and we'll go back and forth until we've run out of ideas, and then we'll start the next group. Does that make sense? Yes. Excellent. All right, pioneers. This group, first idea.
Sexy new app.
Pardon?
Sexy new app.
A sexy new app. I had to make sure what you were saying. Right. Okay, next group.
Create a competition within the building itself. To create so each stores compete with each other. Drive more change.
Right. So every now and again I'm going to pause and query. So immediately I'm going to query. Sorry, who was talking? Sorry. So a competition suggests what?
An interval competition within each different.
Right.
It suggests that you care about what other people think about you. We put competition on the prospect.
Yeah, right. So I have to just ask you to qualify that. Is that individual actions or is it group actions?
You can do it on an individual's scale. So, for example, you have like start with the month or most sustainable.
That works. No, that works. Do you understand why I qualify that? Brilliant. Next.
We had emphasis on being the catalyst for the competition and the kind of leadership role.
Oh, I've lost the crowd. Yeah, if you could. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you. Is that it for this side? Yeah, next. Pioneers, we're still on pioneers.
Well, we said to put the problem to them, make them come up with a solution. So it's kind of part of that leadership, I think, similar.
Okay, so let's go for ideas. Just a vague sort of, so that could be like a suggestion box, or it could be a sort of write-in thing, or you could all sorts of different things. But it's individuals coming up with ideas. That's yeah.
On that
Okay.
theme, we had scope for ownership. Again, that's what we're doing. So individual action, putting forward our own ideas for projects, so there's a sense of ownership.
Good. So okay, so there's no overlap there. Any new ideas?
Yeah, I don't think we didn't get the right idea now, but climate change is big and global, but we can do some global.
Right. Make. Okay, so we're making a difference.
It's really, yes, driving action yourselves.
On their own. Qualifying it. But that could also go for prospectors in a group situation. So good. Okay, back to this side of the room. Any other new ideas we haven't covered on pioneers? Yeah.
We said about them being the champions and the pilot of the project. Usually a carbon pilot and help to steer it on.
Okay.
Building.
That's great, but I'm going to query that because it's the right answer, but I'm querying the category. So would a pioneer who just is off on their own and confident and not really bothered what anybody else thinks because they've got right on their side, are they going to be that interested in?
If you're asking them to innovate, can you think of a pilot? Can you inspire others through your innovation? Then probably,
Yeah. In terms of innovation, definitely, but But as a champion, being seen as being a champion is motivation, I'm not so sure. But I would definitely say perspective. Perspective would definitely be interested in being a champion. Yeah. So it's the right answer. I mean, these things are not right. I'm being a bit absolute here, just sort of try to drive a wedge between these three. The reality is, as I was saying before, you get a merging of these different traits, and sometimes, confusingly, even more confusing, depending on the issue, you could be more of a prospector on one issue, more of a pioneer, but we're not going to go there. Not there. Okay, so anything else new on the pioneer side? Yep.
We've said that the framing of the whole thing, pioneers, needed to be about it being a good sustainability thing to do, so they'd be motivated by it being good for the planet.
Excellent. Right. So the message is it's a good thing. It might be ethical. Yeah. Saving the planet, all that stuff. That would what would we like? So yeah, definitely. That's what we're talking about. All of that's all good motivating stuff for the planet. Absolutely right. Good. Anything else new on that?
So the technology too then. So it's new cutting edge metering technology that we're running on campus. We've got these great display screens and all that.
Excellent. So that's where you were going with the app, but we can say and other tech. Absolutely right. That is really important. Any gadget, gizmo, funky, sort of that the pioneers love that. Great. Okay. We're done on pioneers. Come back to it if you like. Let's go for more on perspectives now. So we've got something to do with the group competition. That the group drives the action, and the fact that a champion in amongst a group situation, all that's good. And anything else new this side of the room you've thought about in terms of perspective?
Incentives. They want things to make you feel better.
Yeah. Very good. That is absolutely right. This group, more than any other, really responds well to incentives. Yeah, and not just cash, but in particular, peer-related incentives. Definitely works. Guys, anything else on perspectives?
We did think about this sort of sort of awards and something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Recognition.
And in terms of framing, so then we thought probably framing that in more an institutional context, so maybe a school or director context.
So
whereas you've got a global context for the pioneers, these guys want something that's a bit closer to home.
So you're working with a team, whatever that team might be. Yeah. And just like the platoons in the army, the soldier would never fight for the cause of the country, fight for our mates. You've got to be careful when you start drawing lines around teams to get that right. Why the hell do I have to work with the language people? They're weird. I don't understand what they're saying. You wouldn't do that, would you? But you try to find affinities, and then people work very well. Good. Yeah.
Interactive ways to make people work together.
Excellent. Very good. Okay. Keep coming.
We thought potentially getting people involved in organising the event as well, so the workers get to launch the competition.
Good. Excellent. Based. Okay.
Quantifiability as well. We want to show them results that they can understand, show that they actually that their actions have results.
Very good. Yeah. So feedback. That's a good insight. That's really good.
I was thinking the feedback should be different for the different groups then.
Yes, it should. So how?
The pioneers should have full heavy feedback.
Yeah.
So you can also tell for carbon sake, you can say the difference they're making.
Yeah.
prospectus would be petition,
Yeah.
and the settlers would be money saved.
Money saved. Very good. Excellent. Now you're getting it. Absolutely right. Very good. This is great.
So we sort of expected, so could we understand, could we ensure that something that feels good literally and talking to us first, ensuring that the temperature was more comfortable in the building, so avoiding overheating and moving.
Yeah. So how would that,
Well,
how would you convey that in a message?
Okay, so ensuring that the building temperatures are more comfortable. Not quite getting it, but that's
Think about it a bit more. You're nearly there with that. That's a good idea, but it's not, just think how you might say it. Come back to you.
Will make you more comfortable. Make the environment that you're working in.
Right. Okay.
So let's be careful, because that could imply having additional air conditioning in summer.
Exactly. There's the bear trap. Absolutely. Turn up the heat. That's what I really wanted. I'm always freezing in here. Terrible. Yeah, it doesn't really do it, does it?
So,
Yeah. But you're on the right lines. Yeah. So basically, if something has changed because of cuts, and you want to bring it back to where it was because you're using renewable energy, and it gets warmer again, that would work. You see? But it wouldn't work in the other way. That we're increasing comfort, which might backfire on it. So you've got to be careful with some of these things. Anything more on prospectus that we haven't written down yet? Read it. No? So basically, just reinterpreting some of these things from the pioneers. So innovation by collective, okay, as opposed to innovation by individual. That's what I was looking for now. All right, good. So let's go for the settlers. Start on the side. So we've already got money. So money was a common element for all of these things. Did anybody come to a decision about how you would get a settler to actually do something once the solution was available?
So future security.
Yeah. So how would that work in a solutions-based setting? What could we do for settlers to make them save energy?
I'd link it to their job, essentially.
Good. Okay. Job security. Yeah.
Or another thing that's given by a chance to kind of say something about it, so it's essential to the university or something like that, to back it up.
Yeah, it depends who it is and how senior they are and things like that. Some people don't really give much of a toss about CVs. I don't agree with that. But I see what you're saying. Yes, they're more likely. Settlers are more likely to have regard to authority. So that is a good observation. Yeah, good.
But everybody else is doing it now, so we almost thought it was linear, like the pioneers would start with champion, the prospectors would join the teams, and then the settlers would be sort of, they'd come along when it was normal and they could see that something was already being done.
Excellent. So, great point. Now, just finish it off for me. So, in campaign terms, what would you be saying? Yeah, so how would you say? You see this on motorway signs on litter, as a clue. What do the motorway signs in litter say nowadays? Yeah. Have you ever seen these little on the matrix board? What does it say? It sometimes says that, but it says something about other people. Remember this? You ever seen this? Other people do. Yeah, take a little home with you, other people do. Or words to that effect. Okay? That is a classic psychology-based message. And it was pioneered in the petrified forest in Arizona. Would you believe it? And basically, people were nicking the bits of the petrified forest. So it was starting to disappear. And they started with nobody saying, "Don't pick up the stones because that's why you're here," and people totally ignored it. And eventually they stopped it by doing signs saying, "People who visit here respect this one." And it stopped. Okay. Okay, you've heard about the towel experiment, hotel towel experiment? You know that sign you get in we care about the environment, and if you're here for more than 2 nights, you can help save the planet by hanging up your towel and we won't want it. You've seen this? And everybody goes, yeah, I'm paying a bloody fortune, and they're trying to save money so they can solve it. That's what people do. Okay, so put up a sign to try to stop them doing that, saying, all right, read this. 75% of people who stayed in this room reused their towels, and the reuse level went up. Go figure. Who would know? It had a remarkable effect. And the reason is because of that general feeling. Well, everybody else is doing that. Guess what? You know, and it's incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful. So, the message for settlers on energy saving would be, help me out.
We're doing it.
Everyone else is doing it.
Ah, brilliant. That is a magic. And also it works beautifully for these guys.
When settlers, you can also frame it in the context of something they're already doing. Like we say, thank you for taking all this in, thank you for turning the lights off. If you give the impression that they're already doing it, and if they're not, then then everybody else is.
And actually settlers love to be fun.
Yeah, because then you're not asking them to change behaviour. You're assuming that they're doing it.
Very good. Brilliant. Excellent. That's really good. Yeah?
I was just thinking of the stickers that we're going to have to put on the light switches for the 3 days.
It's like a telephone.
We're going to have to offer the one that says switch off, save the planet.
Yeah.
Switch off, everyone else does.
Switch off, you want to keep the job. That's it. Excellent. Brilliant. Okay. So we're nearly done. Any other new ideas on settlers to anybody?
You just said about reputation.
Yes, good. Yeah. So preserving your reputation.
And the university, something about the history of this university's been here for 100
Yeah.
years, help us
Good.
afford
So
for it to be here. And
preserving heritage is another really good one. That's great. So reputation, individual reputation, is important in here, isn't it? Whereas the pioneers don't really care. Okay, that's really good. Excellent. All right. Sorry, yeah.
We have a particular group of students who become quite attached to some we have a recyclable water bottle, and it started out as a gadget, but I'm just learning how some of them are really incorporating it into their daily life on campus, and it's like a habit using this. I'm just thinking that these students must be settlers. It's a part of their daily life that they routine, filling up the bottle, drinking it.
Possibly, some of them definitely will be, but that's an interesting one because you could read across. Let's do that. We were doing energy, but let's quickly do a water bottle. So for a settler to be persuaded to take a water bottle, you would have to probably take something away. So one thing we're thinking of doing is banning sale of water bottles and also the water cooler thing, okay, and then installing more water fountains. All right, and to get to buy into that, they would just have to appreciate what they had at gone. They won't like it, but it's an absolute. Whereas prospectors, in order to take that, you get a bigger buy-in if you involve them in planning of a pallet like that. And the pioneers would go to that if they say, be the first on your block to have a reusable water bottle. Yeah. Okay, excellent. All right, anything else on anything else? No? Brilliant. Okay, so I would like to think you definitely got something else. That is really good, fantastic thing to involve with. And as I said, I'm not selling this to you, but it's just another, thing to do, thing to think about when you're planning campaigns. And I always find it helpful, even if it's just a double check on what you're doing. Yeah.
Very quick question. Should you separate out messages from 3 posters, or can you mix them?
That is a good question. And ideally, what you would do is mix up the messages. Yeah, so have 3 different posters, put them all around, not all next to each other, like a light very strange. So what would happen is 2/3 of people would walk past one of the one poster because it doesn't apply to them, whereas one would go, oh, sorry.
So that is a separate message on each poster, not one poster with 3 different.
Exactly. No, that would look odd, definitely, and probably wouldn't get anybody going. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much for